Good evening and happy St. Patrick's Day, and welcome to the second of two Inside Government shows tonight, produced for the spring 2022 semester here at Cayuga Community College and broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon, Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, better known as ARMA. That's why we use the acronym, and Win 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. We are more than delighted to have as our guest tonight in the studio State Senator Assemblyman Brian Manktelow, who was first elected to the Assembly in 2018 and is now in his second term representing the Assembly District that includes all parts of Cayuga County, Oswego, and Wayne counties. That is subject to change, and we'll talk about that at the end of the program. But we've asked him on to talk about what is going on in the Assembly, what is going on with the budget. We'll also be talking about a number of items that are going policy-wise in the state. We'll also ask him about the performance of Kathy Hochul, the governor who's been in place for about 7 months. We'll also talk about redistricting and how that will affect him and others in November. Welcome back. You have been very gracious with your time to the college. I know you were here in January taking a tour of the nurses facility.
Yes.
And you're going to meet with some nurses today. And so we're very appreciative for all the time you spend on Cayuga.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be back here, and I'm looking forward to meeting with the nurses as well.
So ask us of all the people who come in here, especially if they haven't been here in a while, how are you doing? How are you and your family faring with COVID and all that? I know you had COVID at one point.
That's correct, yes.
You were very upfront about that. You told people about that in the media. But how are you doing?
Very well. Moving out of COVID, actually losing a little weight, Guy, so that's a good thing. And really pretty busy down in Albany, and look forward again to heading back this coming week.
So where are you in the budget process? When I say you, I mean the overall, the legislature, the Assembly, not so much the Senate. We just had Senator Helming here,
Sure.
But where are you when it comes to the budget process?
So right now, Guy, we just had our one house budget that was presented to us. So we had it brought up to the floor in a resolution form. We debated a good portion of that proposed budget. Looking at it, it's a big number in that budget. You know, this year, the overall budget, for this year was $212 billion. The governor proposed $218 billion in her executive budget. Our one house budget was at $226 billion.
So let's pause for a second, because people may not understand that a one house budget is the majority. And just so we're clear, you are not in the majority.
That is correct, Guy.
Okay, so
that is correct.
Senate Democrats have Assembly Democrats have a overwhelming majority in your House.
A little better than 2-1.
2-1. So they have put together a budget, and then the Senate did the same. So Senate Democrats did the same. That one is also higher, which is not unusual that the one House bills, and I would say this for the last 3 or 4 governors, are always higher. Usually it's mostly focused on education spending.
Yes.
That may not be the case this time around. Am I correct? Or is it education?
I think education, of course, is a big part. But they're also pushing more programs, pushing more things for children, funding daycares, coming up with a way that all families can have daycare funded through New York State. That's one of the priorities.
So besides, let's not get to the one House bill first, because I know those are just negotiating tools. But of that $218 billion with a B that Kathy Hochul put out, were there things in the budget that you liked?
Yes. So, there's some money in there, again, for our veterans, of course, and some of the peer-to-peer.
And you served. So you were a sergeant?
Yes.
Thank you for your service. But when did you serve?
During the Cold War.
Okay.
I was in the U.S. Army. I was a tanker.
So. And you were in Europe?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I do remember when you come on, but veterans programs, and you've talked to nurses about veterans serving. Veterans programs are important to you, so you like that piece in the budget.
I do. Okay. There are certain pieces in the budget that I think we all like. Some of the things that we push for. The problem will be is those pieces will be all put together in one budget that'll have basically 7 parts that we vote on.
So you vote on 7 different bills. Yes. So. Are there things in the budget right off the bat when you saw what Governor Hochul presented? This is a bad idea.
Yeah.
You want to give us an example?
Yeah, let's talk about bail reform.
Okay.
We thought in the budget we would see some some pieces of that bail reform being brought back, maybe some increased funding for our frontline police officers and for the safety of all community members. And that was definitely not in there. I know she's made a few suggestions here, I think we heard today.
Right.
Well.
So the New York Post is reporting that they have a copy of, I think, of a memo that says there's going to be a 10-point plan, largely pushed by things that Mayor Adams of New York City has been pushing for, Assembly and Senate Republicans, and many upstate. Sheriff Skank was here.
Okay.
Police chief was here for the city of Auburn. They're all pushing this. Do you think I'm sorry we're getting too far afield from the budget, but you're on bail reform. Let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
A, why was it bad in 2019? I'm assuming you did not vote for it.
That's correct.
Why was it bad, and what needs to be fixed?
So in general, Guy, bail reform, it wasn't bad in its sense. But what happened was they pushed it so far one way, overbalanced too far. And
so you agree that there were some problems with bail in New York?
Oh, absolutely.
For the poor, there were some, cashless bail had some questionable.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. But I think, Guy, when we looked at that, we looked at some of the problems that could come from that. They didn't involve our local police departments, our sheriffs, our state police. They didn't involve the judges. They didn't involve any of the players that were going to have to actually work within that bail reform. And the other big thing here, of course, in New York State is we are so vast and so different. New York City and some of the issues that they have there in regards to bail reform is totally different than where we are here in upstate New York, different from Long Island. And again, I've said this all along, we cannot continue to legislate one size fits all because we're just...
And I know you haven't had a chance to review her proposal, but what is being reported, there are specifics that just go for transit and subways. To the best of my knowledge, other than Centro up here, there is no subways and no mass transit like there is in the city. So clearly part of this is aimed for New York City as a reform.
Yeah.
So it's nice that she's, and I don't mean this sarcastically, so please don't take it this way. It's nice that she's proposing something. But the biggest opponents to change specifically have been Senate Democrats, Senator Mike Gianaris, Andrea Stewart-Cousins. I don't know about in your house. I'm sure there are people who are opposed to reforming bail reform. Does it have a chance?
I think it does. I hope it does. We're going to continue to advocate for that. It's not just the minority side that's advocating. There's also members of the majority side as well, because we are in different parts of the state. And as I said, Guy, New York City, the Burgs down there, that area is just totally different.
Are you surprised that Kathy Hochul is releasing a bail reform now when she said she wasn't?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
so let's go back to the budget. So I want to go, we talked about a little bit about what's in there. So what is your role in a budget? Do you participate in, I know you serve on several committees.
Yep.
Do you serve on budget committees where you hear budget presentations?
Yes. I've been on several of those this year.
Okay.
The ag one. Probably the biggest one I've been on, Guy, is the ENCON, environmental conservation, because that's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, outside of public education.
Okay.
But as far as getting people in, talking about huge things going on in the state, the state's pushing our green right now, going green. And I want to be perfectly clear, I'm not against going green. I just know that we cannot do it.
And we're not talking green St. Patrick's Day. We're talking about green initiatives.
Yeah, electric vehicles, getting rid of natural gas, getting rid of oil, diesel fuel in our engines.
So budget presentations that way. You did say the biggest chunk of the budget, often maybe social services competes up in there as well, is education. What is the governor proposing overall in education?
She's definitely putting more money into education this year. That didn't surprise any of us. As we go through that education budget, and I actually had a Zoom meeting with NYSET, New York State Unified Teachers, yesterday afternoon, going through their concerns and their wants. And one of the things I brought up to them, Guy, was because of the Green Initiative, the governor's pushing that we have electric school buses, I believe, by 2035. That's a huge cost. And I think a lot of the schools are having concerns about that because the state saying, okay, we're gonna aid that. We're gonna aid that. Okay, you're gonna aid that. There's 55,000 buses in New York State, school buses. Right now, the average bus costs around 150,000. Right now, a new electric bus, 350 to 400,000 a piece. So you know that if they're going to aid that, you can do the math on it. If they're going to aid that, you know they're going to pull something from someplace else.
So, well, one of the things that's important, I know you don't represent the city of Auburn, but you do represent districts where foundation aid because of poverty is an issue. So have they, I know this is the second of 3 years, as I understand it, of correcting underfunding, but first of all, am I correct on that? Underfunding, this is the second or third.
Yeah.
But the bigger issue, are they fixing the formula?
They're really not. They say they are. They're playing the shell game. They're again, just in my district alone, we have certain schools that because of when the whole foundation aid was brought forward and the way where they distributing the money per student for all the parameters of that, there's some schools that are really being hurt. And even though they say they're going to address the foundation aid, they're not.
How do community colleges, I mean, you obviously, your current district has at least some schools in there.
Yep.
How do community colleges, I ask that because we happen to be taping at one.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at the SUNY and CUNY schools, and one of the things that we're pushing is how important our community colleges are, especially coming out of the pandemic. A lot of people don't have a lot of money. Our children don't have a lot of money coming out of the school. And one of our concerns there is getting them in school, getting them the opportunity and the possibility to have a degree. And that's why we had talked earlier when I was up here the last time, taking and looking at the nursing portion of the school.
You were stunned, for example, just that parking fees.
Yes, we talked about that.
As nurses here have to do, and they do great classes and practicals at SUNY, I believe SUNY Upstate in St. Joe's, but they got to pay for parking.
Yes.
And you thought it was odd that they were paying the SUNY system for parking at Upstate when they're SUNY students.
Yeah. So, and as I told you then, we have been working on see if we can get that changed so these students can go there and not have to pay for that. So I'm working with some of the majority members that are in that area in Syracuse. And I think we're making a little bit of progress. But right now, everything's on the budget.
So I want to ask about some pieces of the budget that are also there before we get into adoption. One of the things that Governor Hochul seems to have put into this was you mentioned COVID, was this issue of the to-go drinks. Restaurants during COVID were able to, if you ordered food, you could order a drink. And I'm not trying to be somebody who's selling alcohol here, but that was cut out of the process, I think, during the last days of the Cuomo administration because there's some laws about it.
Yes. It
sounds like Kathy Hochul would like to allow restaurants to serve alcohol again. Am I correct on that?
That is correct.
But then I think I read somewhere, again, most likely the New York Post, because I read the tabloids occasionally. It sounds like that's out of the budget process right now. Do you know of anything about that? Or first of all, do you think it's a good idea to allow restaurants to sell alcohol to go?
Well, with the push that we've had over many, many years with DWI and the ability or the option to have a quick sip while driving home.
Oh, that you were. Okay, that's
a concern. That's a concern I have. I think a lot of us have, just because of the push that we've done for DWI.
So on that note, to go, and we talked about some other things that are policy. One of the big criticisms of the last three governors, I want to say Spitzer, Cuomo, and Patterson to a certain degree. It wasn't so much Pataki to the best of my memory, but my memory might not go back that far on that, was these governors putting policy. So to me, if you're changing a policy to go alcohol, that's not a budget issue.
That's correct.
Is there a problem with all this policy being put into these budgets? And how do you stop it?
Yeah, well, the stop has to come from leadership. It has to come from the majority members. They have control of both houses and the governor.
But it also was policy when Republicans were in control of the Senate. It's governors putting this policy in. And the governor in New York is one of the strongest executives in the country.
Absolutely.
When it comes to budget. But this is policy, isn't it?
It is, and when I first got to Albany, we saw the policy coming in, because what happens is you have all the budget. Budget should really just be numbers, just financial numbers, But now they want to throw in this piece of the policy or that piece, and it's
Because they can't pass on their own, though.
that's right.
Okay.
That's how they negotiate it. That's how they do the shell game down there, and it's really a detriment to our taxpayers, because they're asking us to vote on a number. Everybody thinks we're voting on this number for the budget. Well, you have this policy in place or that policy in place, and it's
So all of those 7 budget bills may have some policy in them. Well, they're
Could.
all going to, one way or
Probably.
the other. So on track to adopt a budget by April 1st?
I see that happening for 2 reasons. First of all, it's Governor Hochul's first year.
Okay.
She's going to want an on-time budget. Secondly, we all know it's an election year. I think all the members across the board, along with our governor, are going to want an on-time budget.
Is it important to have an on-time budget?
Absolutely. It should always be on time. Absolutely, whether it's an election year or not, because the people of the state deserve to have an on-time budget.
So you're seeing some draft. I mean, if you take the one House bills, I don't know if they've been broken out into 7 individual pieces, but
Not yet, but
do you think this is a budget you can support?
parts of it, yes, Guy. Parts of it, no.
So you won't see until you see the printings.
Well, I've seen the one House budget, of course, not the Senate one, but the Assembly. We have the executive budget. We'll see in the next 2 weeks how the negotiating goes. And one of the things that we're pushing is getting 5 members to the table for the negotiation.
So I was going to ask this. So when Andrea Stewart-Cousins was the minority leader in the Senate, she had a very big push that it should be 5 people. It was not 5 men. It used to be 3 men in a room.
Yep.
She wanted not only the majorities of both houses, but the minority leaders.
Absolutely.
Under the current structure with Kathy Hochul, first of all, have any meetings occurred?
With the minority leaders?
Well, no, budget between, whether it's 3 persons in a room or 5 people in a room, have any of those meetings started to occur yet?
I do not know that. I'm not saying it hasn't, but I don't know that.
So my question then is, so Will Barkley, who you have a district that abuts his up in Oswego County, where our Fulton campus is.
Yes.
Is he going to be? Do you have an expectation that he will be in budget negotiations? Do you think we're back to 3 people, and I will say people in a room?
Sure.
So it'll be Carl Hasty, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and the governor.
When the governor did her State of the State this year, she talked about bringing everybody in place, bring everybody to the table, and we didn't forget that. So we're continuing to push every chance I have, every chance any of the members have, to bring that to the table again. Should absolutely be 5, at least 5 in the room.
So I know the guest before this, Senator Helming, has been pushing to stop or at least pause the gas tax. First of all, can you explain to the public, because I know you wear many hats, and one of those is agriculture. And so farmers have been hit very hard by the rise in prices due to, whether you want to say it's, not you, but whether the public wants to say it's inflation caused by supply chain or it's the war in Ukraine. How does the state get money on fuel?
So right now, in all fuel, there's a gas tax of, I think it's around 58 cents a gallon. So when the prices go up or down, that number never changes. It's based on 58 cents. It's based on the gallon. So that's how they get some of the funding. And initially, that funding was to go to roads and bridges.
CHIPS, the state
Stuff
highway.
like, yes.
So would you like to see a pause on this because of the rise in prices?
It's twofold.
Okay.
Because, yes, I would like to see a pause, but we have to remember at the same time, if we're not getting that money in this part of the budget, where are we going to replace it? And the only reason I want to see a pause, I would consider and vote for a pause of, maybe 3 to 6 months at the most.
So
at
a
least,
temporary pause.
yeah, because what I'm seeing out there and what I'm hearing is a lot of our senior citizens that are on fixed incomes right now, they're really struggling with inflation, food costs, fuel costs, heating costs. And if we can do something to get a little bit of relief for them for a short time, that would be the fastest thing to do.
I want to just quickly touch on economic development. I know there's a lot of talk right now about the Bills Stadium, especially in the last couple of days, because I think the price tag on that is about $860 million, and they'd like the state to chip in on that. I don't know if there's a specific number. Are you aware?
I've not heard of.
Is that a good idea?
I think right now in today's world where we are, if I was the governor or had the opportunity to actually say no, I think we put it on hold right now. Our sports is very big in our state, as in all states in the U.S. I'm not saying we shouldn't support it, maybe at a scaled down version, but I think right now we would ask the Bills to let's hold off on that for a few years. Let's let our people get back on their feet from COVID, and then we can take another look at it.
So if it does get pushed through, there is some calls from municipal officials here in the city of Auburn. The mayor's signed, I think he signed a letter saying, listen, if Buffalo's going to get any part of $860 million, which is real dollars, we should all be getting something. Absolutely. Whether it's for a sports facility, we'll say Falcon Park, for example. Is that only fair?
Absolutely. Well, why is, and I understand it's an NFL stadium, I understand that, but why is that stadium any different than any other stadium in New York State? All of our stadiums in all of our regions, in our cities, in our small communities, they're important to the people that live there.
Where do we get the money from, though?
Well, they'll play the shell game. You know, we've talked about the debt that the state has. The biggest monkey in the room, though, Guy, is the unemployment money that we owe back to the federal government. It's like $8 or $9.1 billion that we owe the federal government for loaning us that money to cover unemployment insurance through COVID.
So we've talked about the governor a couple of times. We've mentioned her name. She's been in office 7 months. How's she doing as far as you're concerned?
I think she's not living up to what she said she was going to do. Transparency, absolutely not happening. I think the power of art has already gone, I won't say to her head, but she's using her powers. And she really, again, needs to work with all the legislators, not only us, but our counties and our local municipalities back home, especially going into this. And we don't see that happening.
And I'm assuming it's just not on the budget front. How about her response to COVID?
I think when she continued with the mask mandate, with the vaccine mandate, and holding our school children to the very end to be the last ones to demask was absolutely appalling.
I want to ask this because you and I have talked about this, I think, on the show, and if it's been in private, I apologize for disclosing your private conversation, but it's been this issue of the nursing home deaths.
Yes.
So Comptroller Tom DiNapoli, I believe his office released a report that the numbers are even higher.
Yes.
Than expected. Well, first of all, what was his finding?
I don't know what the numbers are right in front of me.
No, but he did find that there were issues there.
Absolutely.
So the question for me is, what is I know that there were those who were opposed to the health commissioner, and the assembly doesn't get to vote on her. It's a Senate appointment, I believe.
I believe you're right.
Is the legislature calling committees? I mean, it's nice to complain about Ms. Bassett and she's not going backwards. And I say that in the sense that she's not looking back on this. But is the legislature investigating this nursing home issue in a bipartisan way?
They were months ago, because I was part of that investigation. Okay. To be honest with you, I don't know where we are right this moment. I will find that out for you, though, because as we continue, we have to know. We have to know the real numbers, because if we don't know the real numbers and what really happened, how can we protect those individuals the next time something like this happens?
And you expect that at some point something's going to come up, whether it's a COVID, like there will be another health crisis at some point.
Let's hope not in our lifetime or our kids' lifetime, but it could happen, absolutely.
So I want to end a little bit on not so much politics, but redistricting. So you have the current 130th district. We talked about that. It's Cayuga Wayne and part of the Oswego. That is not what you would have this November. Am I correct?
That is correct. I will be losing, unfortunately, my portion of Cayuga County, the northwest portion of Oswego County, and I will now be picking up the town of Webster in Monroe County.
Are you paired with another assembly member? Because I know some in the Senate there's a couple pairings. Or you would? Okay.
There are no assembly members that are paired against each other.
So this was supposed to be a process where we had an independent redistricting commission.
Mhm.
They produced maps, and it sounds like the majorities in both the Assembly and the Senate said, no thanks.
Pretty much.
Okay, I'm summarizing.
Nope. And I am too.
Okay.
So
what happened?
So what happened was the first set of maps came out. We were supposed to be given one Assembly map, one Senate map, one congressional map. That's not what we got. We got two maps. One from each side of the commission, the ones where the Republicans were, the ones where the Dems were, all the way up through. So a lot of us voted that down because that's not what the people voted for. That was the reason I voted against it.
So currently the Assembly, roughly, I know there's some open seats because they're always, you've got 150 members.
Yes.
Somebody leaves every now and then or passes away, unfortunately. So right now the split is 105 to 43. So
Yes.
Republicans are 43. The way the districts are now formatted,
Mhm.
do they work against Republicans? Is it only, in your view? I'm asking
as they are right now, Guy.
Yes.
I think with the districts that most of us have right now, I think all of us on both sides of the aisle are pretty comfortable in taking care of our districts.
So it'd be the status quo. You'll still
Yeah.
see about 100 to 40 or 100 to 50.
I'm talking about right now, yeah.
Okay.
So once we go through the election this fall, I think we will see some changes. I don't know where those numbers are going to end up.
Do you plan to seek re-election?
Absolutely 100%.
And at this stage, do you have an opponent?
I do. The same gentleman that's ran against me the last couple times.
Scott Comagese.
Yep.
You have both been gracious enough to come into the studio for forums. And you're in the petition process right now, correct?
That's correct.
And that ends when?
I think we can start turning them in, I believe, the 3rd of April.
So last questions as we finish up. Have you endorsed anybody for governor?
I have not. Well, I shouldn't say that. Through the process of what we do as Republicans, I think Lee Zeldin will be the endorsed governor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think it's an uphill battle for the GOP to get the governors off? Now, I know there's been a twist in the last 48 hours because the former governor has now been talking about possibly running against Kathy Hochul.
Yes.
So discounting that,
Mhm.
Is it tough? I mean, the last time the Republicans ran and cleared the fence was 1994 with George Pataki, Governor former Mayor Peekskill State Senator. Is it tough? Is this going to be a tough race for Lee Zeldin?
I think it will be very tough, but I think it's definitely doable. Absolutely.
We do want to thank you for your time. You're always gracious to come here,
Thanks, Scott.
whether it's to come into the studio, but also to meet with our students, and we appreciate that. Our guest has been Assemblyman Brian Manktelow, and we still hope that you're still going to represent here until December 31st.
Well, like I tell everyone, Guy, I'm not going away. When this isn't my district, it'll still be my district. I'll still be coming here.
Well, we'd love to have you back in to discuss the issues, and we
anytime.
appreciate that. We will be back on Tuesday with 2 new shows. We're going to have Jeff Perazzola, the superintendent of schools for Auburn, in. Since we had him on about a month ago, literally, there have been several new developments at the district. One has been the mask mandate, which has been removed. Another has been the arrest of a school resource officer. And then there was a vote by the board on a book that was questionable for its appropriateness on the shelves of the Auburn High School Library. So we'll have him in to talk about that. We'll also talk about not football, but baseball. It is upon us, and a representative of the Auburn Doubledays will be here to talk about the upcoming season. We've already started Spartan baseball games down at Falcon Park, but we're going to now look at what's going to be here in June. Over the next several weeks, we will have several other guests that you should tune into. Cayuga County Legislative Chairman David Gould will be here, as well as Auburn City Manager Jeff Dygert. The Executive Director of the Auburn Housing Authority, Stephanie Hutchinson, will be in the room, as well as Dr. Adam Epler of the Owasco Lake Watershed Management Council. He'll be in here to give us an update. And we hope to bring you the Auburn YMCA's Y Camp Director, Melissa Kanga-Cartner. We unfortunately weren't able to have her because of a scheduling issue for her on Tuesday, but we hope to have her at the end of the month to talk about that great asset on Owasco Lake. And of course, we'll finish off our season with the Auburn Enlarged School District Forum, which is scheduled for May 3rd. Candidates who want to start circulating petitions may do so starting on this coming Monday, and you can pick them up at the Auburn Board of Education. Before we go, though, if you do want to send us questions, you can do so at COZGUY tho@aol.com, or by mail to Inside Government, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. We hope you have a good night, have a great tomorrow. If you haven't gotten vaccinated, get vaccinated or get boosted or wear a mask. But above all, be safe.